So, these incidents started about 6 years ago and went on for a couple of years. I used to be really into the music scene, going to shows and festivals every chance I got. This often meant meeting random people whose names I would forget 5 seconds later. As a result of being out in Atlanta nightlife so often, I got frequent friend requests on Facebook, and naive younger me blindly accepted them, assuming they were just people I'd met at shows that I was too drunk or distracted to remember. One day, I got a message from somebody named Eddie. His Facebook profile picture was of someone at least a decade older than me, with long, straggly hair. He looked harmless enough, just another show-going hippie, I assumed. His message simply asked if I was the girl that danced a half circle around him at the local show last night, and then twirled dreamily away, or something along those lines. This was back in 2012, so I don't remember the exact words. I responded that I had no recollection of that, and upon further investigation saw that he lived in an entirely different state, so it couldn't have been me. He said that I must have a doppelganger out there somewhere, and I left the conversation at that. Over the next few months, I'd get random notifications that he had messaged me, asking if I'd be at various shows across the Southeast. I mostly ignored the messages, but would very occasionally respond, shortly expressing interest in a band he had mentioned, just trying to be polite. Why younger me felt the need to be polite to everyone is beyond me. I have since learned that it's okay to not respond to persistent internet strangers. The messages became more and more frequent, so I just started to leave them unread. Again, why I didn't block him is beyond me. I guess I thought he was just harmless and lonely. Fast forward about a year. It's the summer of 2013, if two of my best friends and I caravanning to Wakarusa, a music festival that took place in Ozark, Arkansas. It was about a 13-hour drive from Atlanta, but totally worth it. We went every year. An important note here is that this wasn't some small, intimate festival. It hosted upwards of 40,000 people, and it was often hard to keep track of my friends, let alone find people I knew who came separately. So, my friends and air, on a blanket, in the middle of a huge crowd watching widespread panic. It's nighttime, so the only lights are coming from the stage, random LED toys or glow sticks or whatever. Out of nowhere, someone elines for our blanket, makes himself at home next to me without permission, and strikes up a conversation. My group of friends is generally warm and accepting, and it wasn't unusual to make random friends at a big hippie fest like this, so thought nothing of it at first. Probably just someone high on ecstasy and looking for company. It wasn't until he started referencing me in my Facebook personally that the alarm bell started going off. This was Eddie. I had honestly completely forgotten about him and his persistent messages, and in the darkness, there was no way I would have recognized him. He was talking like I was an old friend and tried to follow us around all night. Once I subtly alerted the others about who he was, we made every excuse in the book to try and leave, go back to our campsite, and call it a night. He was painfully insistent on following us back there and continuing to hang out. Obviously, I didn't want him to know where I slept, so I tried to appease him by saying I was exhausted, but that we could try to meet up tomorrow. Again, dumb, I know. I was just doing anything I could to get him away in the moment and had no intention of actually following through. He finally left us alone, and we walked a long roundabout way to our campsite, just in case he had watched her try to follow at a distance. The next day, I made an avid point to avoid the area where we ran into Eddie, discussed meeting up. The festival venue was huge, so I figured there was no way he'd find me again. I was beside a small stage in the back corner of the venue, hooping in the woods with my friends when I noticed him out of the corner of my eye. He was standing beside a tree alone, watching me with a weird smile. It reminded me of a proud dad watching his young daughter play, but with way creepier and more sinister overtones. Still, he hadn't done or said anything explicitly creepy or threatening. But his presence was so unsettling that I grabbed my friends and we pretended that we had forgotten about a set that was starting, so we ran out of the wooded stage area. I remember hoping he didn't notice I had seen him. The festival ended the next day, and I was relieved to not see him again. Fast forward about another year. At this point, I barely used Facebook and had all but forgotten about Eddie. My friend that I went to the festival with was visiting from out of town that night, and we were going to get some drinks. He got to my house, and we were catching up, and the subject of the festival came up. We started talking about Eddie, and how weird that whole situation was. But at this point, it was less creepy and more of just a strange memory. I told him Eddie used to message me all the time, but I had stopped opening them years ago. Naturally, my friend wanted to look through the messages, so I obliged. Began to scroll through the messages, and I realized just how dire of a mistake it may have been not to block him. He had started by asking me what shows I was going to go to, what part of Atlanta I lived in, etc., not taking the hint that I clearly had no interest in responding at that point. Then, as the months went by, he was sending me links to tickets he had bought for me to shows in Atlanta, and then links to tickets he had bought for us to go together. There was one message asking where he could pick me up for a show that was 2 hours away in Athens, and saying that he couldn't wait to see me again. The messages continued to go on, but at this point, I was so creeped out, I immediately blocked him finally and closed the computer wide-eyed. What the actual heck? He sounded like he was carrying out an entire relationship with me without my consent. He never acknowledged the fact that I literally hadn't responded to or even seen a message from him in over a year. Shaken up, we decided to just go get a drink and stop thinking about this weirdo. We get to Edgewood, a popular bar district in my city, and walk to our favorite small bar to get a drink. As soon as we walk into the bar, my heart sinks to the pit of my stomach. To this day, this was the creepiest, last, most coincidental moment that has ever happened. I see Eddie sitting at the far end of the bar. His face lights up as soon as I walk in, and he motions me over. He says something along the lines of, "I can't believe it's you," and starts firing off questions about me, my life, what I've been up to, and all that. At this point, the darkest feeling washes over me. I just feel unsafe and exposed. Like, why is he here? He doesn't even live in Georgia. I quickly tell him, I have to use the bathroom, but then I'll be back to the bar for a drink. I grab my friend, equally in shock, and we speed walk around the corner to the bathrooms and then passed over. He says something along the lines of, "I can't believe it's you," and starts firing off questions about me, my life, what I've been up to, and all that. At this point, the darkest feeling washes over me. I just feel unsafe and exposed. Like, why is he here? He doesn't even live in Georgia. I quickly tell him, I have to use the bathroom, but then I'll be back to the bar for a drink. I grab my friend, equally in shock, and we speed walk around the corner to the bathrooms and then passed around for about an hour before eventually going home to make sure we weren't being followed. As inconclusive as the whole thing was, that was the last time I ever saw Eddie. And I often wonder if this was just a strange string of coincidences, or it was more sinister. After all, he didn't even live in Georgia. Why was he at one of my favorite bars, alone, the night I happened to go through all of his old messages? Had he somehow gotten a hold of my location via Facebook? I made sure all my location services were off when I checked my phone. So, to this day, I have no idea how he ended up there, or what his intentions were. It happened in my bedroom at the age of 10. I always had trouble sleeping, and spent most nights tossing and turning. I was a horror film fanatic as a child, and being scared was something I didn't have much experience with. I was not afraid of the dark, nor was I easily swayed by strange sounds or odd encounters. I did, however, know when to haul ass out of a situation or to find a trusted adult. I always slept with my closet doors open, which will come to be of some significance later in the story. I should also mention that my family home was in a heavily wooded area, and what some may refer to as the middle of nowhere. One night, around 1 a.m., I awoke to a sound coming from underneath my bed. It sounded like one of my cats was scratching themselves with one of their feet or doing something to cause a thumping beneath me. I had heard the same sounds many times before, and its source had always been one of my fuzzy friends. So this time, I didn't look, closed my eyes, and tried to resume my slumber. I turned over onto my left side, which left me facing the wall against which my bed was pressed up. I heard the sound again, and thinking that my kitty was directly beneath me, I said, "Good night." I was able to fall asleep once again. The next time I awoke, it was to a surreal and shocking scene. The sheet and comforter of my bed were no longer covering me. I saw a man standing over my bed, poking me, literally poking me with his finger, and the way in which he did so was truly horrifying. It was not the way that a child would poke a friend in jest. It was as if he was touching another human being for the first time, exploring the sensation of the tip of his index finger jabbing at flesh. What I saw was so unbelievable and so impossibly strange that I believed I was dreaming. I tried desperately to awake from my nightmare, to no avail. The poking continued. He poked at my chest, my belly, my legs, and my arms. Paralyzed and scared shitless, I yelled, "Wake up!" And with this, the man threw himself to the floor and closed his eyes, as if he was trying to lead me to believe that he was asleep or dead. I have no idea. It was at this time I realized I could not have been dreaming. I somehow found the ability to move, and I jumped from the top of my bed over the man lying on the floor next to me and ran towards my parents' room. When I got to their bedroom door, something came over me. I told myself that this was all impossible, that there was no way that a person could have entered our home without breaking in, as we had always kept every door and window locked at night. I had seen many strange things in my home, while either falling asleep or waking up. By the third or fourth time, after speaking to my mom or dad about it, I knew that it was my mind playing tricks on me. Plush toys do not have the ability to turn and whisper into each other's ears. Do not ask why, dear listener, as I have no explanation to offer you. But I turned away from my parents' bedroom door and decided to hastily check the house for a break-in. What I found was that nothing was out of the ordinary. No broken windows or locks, no busted doors. I assured myself that I had to have been dreaming or hallucinating. Blamed my obsession with horror for this. I made my way down the long, dark and narrow hallway to my bedroom. I peeked inside and saw no one. I turned on the light, got down on the floor just outside the doorway, and looked under the bed. Still nothing. I proceeded to check both of my windows previously. As I lay there, my eyes began to adjust to the dark room with the faint light from the TV screen. Just beyond the TV, I saw something that made my heart sink into the pit of my stomach. Inside my closet, with one of the doors now slightly closed, I saw the man standing perfectly still, facing the wall, hiding, waiting for me to fall asleep, I imagine. Couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I sat and stared at the man in the closet for what seemed like minutes, but was likely only a few seconds. I quietly got out of bed, hoping that the man wouldn't notice and that my dad could catch him hiding in the closet. I once again made my way to my parents' bedroom door, still remaining as quiet as I possibly could, and went inside. I shook my dad and my mom at the same time, and when they awoke, I said, "Shh, don't make any sound. There's somebody in my closet." My parents both jumped up and said, "What?" I repeated myself and asked them to please call 911. My mom immediately picked up the phone. Either of my parents doubted my claim, as I had always been honest and forthright. They both knew that there was no way I was making this up or that I was mistaken. I'm sure that the look I must have had on my face made it clear that this was really happening. My dad told my mom and I that he was going to look and urged us to stay in their bedroom and lock the door. So we did. At this point, I was beyond scared. I didn't know what the man was capable of, whether he had a weapon or whether my dad was safe. I just stood in the room with my mom and cried. After what felt like hours, my dad knocked on the door and told me it was him and that it was okay to open the door. My mom unlocked the door and let my dad inside. I said something to the effect of, "Did you get him?" And my dad looked at me with the most unsettling and confused look imaginable. He said, "There's no one there." I assured him that there was indeed a man in my room and that he had been poking me. My dad said that he just checked every inch of the house and found nobody. He had also checked the doors and windows just as I had done, and it hit me. Must have had a key. As soon as I said this, my parents looked at each other in absolute terror. Our nearest neighbor, a trusted and beloved friend whom we considered family, was in possession of a key to our house, as she had regularly babysat me since I was a toddler. She was the only person outside of my immediate family with a key to our home. Soon after this revelation, the police arrived, took statements, checked around our property, and left. None of us got any sleep that night. The next day, my dad went to my neighbor's house and asked if she knew where her key to our house was. She said yes, and when she went to show him, she saw that it was missing. Her home had no signs of a break-in, and she had always kept her doors and windows locked. My parents had all of the locks on our doors changed and opted to never give a key to anyone except in the wake of an emergency. I never discovered the identity of the man that lurked in my bedroom that night. The event left me traumatized, and it took a very long time for me to accept what had happened and move on. My sleeping trouble turned into full-on insomnia, and for about a decade, I was unable to sleep without a light on.